Welcome to City Connection. It's Monday, May 4, 2026, and I'm your host, Allison Donahue. Brought to you by the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, this live program connects you directly with our city officials, giving you the chance to hear the latest local news and ask questions about the issues that matter most to you. Joining us later on the show today is Mayor David LaGrand. But first, let's go over some of the latest updates from around Grand Rapids. The search to fill the First Ward City Commission seat is still ongoing after commissioners failed to reach a consensus following finalist interviews last month. The seat was left vacant after former Commissioner Drew Robbins announced his run for the State House. The three candidates, Danielle Cope, Lindsay Perez-Plesher, and former Commissioner Kurt Reppert, were considered, but the commission did not secure the 4 votes needed to make an appointment, leaving the seat temporarily unfilled. And the city charter does not currently have a process for appointments to vacant commission seats. As the Acrisure Amphitheater prepares for its inaugural season, the city launched a new trip planning website and mobility plan for downtown visitors. The site includes parking reservations, shuttle routes, rideshare zones, and walking maps. As of today, the Dash route was updated to run every 8 minutes, which is nearly twice as often as before. And another change is just a one-directional loop now. According to the city, there are 7,860 off-street parking spaces across 17 lots and 12 ramps, along with over 1,000 on-street spaces within a half-mile of the amphitheater. As part of the plan, the city launched a reserved parking platform developed with Park Mobile, where event ticket holders can reserve parking in advance at city-operated ramps and lots. Availability will vary by event based on expected attendance and overall parking demand. Event parking rates at city-owned ramps and lots will remain consistent with current event pricing and will be dynamically applied based on forecasted attendance, according to the city. The City of Grand Rapids Planning Department last month launched Zone GR, an effort to update the city's zoning ordinance in alignment with the community master plan that was adopted in late 2024. The project kicks off with a community launch event from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 12 at the Grand Rapids Public Library main branch. The event is free and open to the public. Attendees will hear a short presentation on the project, then explore interactive stations covering zoning basics, the current code, and proposed changes. It was a big budget week last week. City Manager Mark Washington presented the city's $785.4 million fiscal year 2027 preliminary budget to the Committee of the Whole last week, outlining a 6.4% increase over the current fiscal year. The general fund is projected at $207 million, growing nearly 5%, largely from property and income tax revenues. Major proposed investments include $201.6 million for water and wastewater, and $11.4 million set aside for private lead service line replacement. Public safety funding includes $75.4 million for police, including support for 10 officers added in this current fiscal year, and $48.3 million for fire services. Oversight and public accountability is funded at $2.9 million. Other key allocations include $56.6 million for economic prosperity and affordability, $48 million for vital streets, $40.4 million for parks and community services, $21.1 million for trash and recycling, $17.8 million for library services, and $13.5 million for the 61st District Court. Budget workshops will take place over the next 2 weeks, followed by a budget public hearing on May 12. The Commission is expected to adopt the final budget on May 19, and the new fiscal year begins July 1. For a deeper breakdown of the proposal, residents can visit the Rapidian.org, where Grand Rapids documenters have published a detailed explainer series titled Making Sense of It All. Last week, the Grand Rapids City Commission approved the first funding awards for the city's new urban ag project, Urban Agriculture. Access of West Michigan and Jade Rabbit will receive a combined $150,000 to expand community-driven food and gardening initiatives in city parks. Access of West Michigan received a $67,000 grant to support the creation of 9 raised garden beds, an herb garden, an urban orchard, and a native plant garden in Joe Taylor Park in the Baxter neighborhood. The project will provide residents with space to grow their own produce and include programming on gardening, nature, conservation, and preparing healthy food. Jade Rabbit will use its $83,000 award to expand community agriculture initiatives at Garfield Park, including removing more than 1,000 square feet of concrete to increase growing space, and over at Martin Luther King Park, where Jade Rabbit will install new infrastructure to support events, workshops, and community programming. A second round of urban agriculture project funding will open this fall through a new request for proposals for projects planned from March through September 2027. Funding for this project comes from an Environmental Justice Impact Grant awarded by Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. Park locations were selected using EGLE's Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which identifies communities most affected by environmental challenges. Reminder, as summer approaches, that the City of Grand Rapids does have a curfew ordinance for minors. Children 11 years and under must be in by 10 p.m. Children 12, 13, and 14 must be in by 11 p.m., and children 15 and 16 must be in by midnight. The curfew ordinance does not apply when a minor is accompanied by a parent or guardian. Children found in violation of the curfew ordinance could face up to 90 days in juvenile detention and/or be fined up to $500, which is a quick way to ruin summer break. The City of Grand Rapids is launching It Takes a Village, a series of free summer violence prevention programs designed to give teens safe, fun, and positive things to do on weekend nights through the summer. The programs will run at 3 different sites across the city and will include sports, music, art, games, food, and other activities. Last year, more than 400 teens took part in the youth program, and more details on the planned programming for this summer can be found online on the city's website. Ferris State University held a town hall at its Kendall College of Art and Design campus in downtown Grand Rapids recently, allowing students to express concerns about changes, express these concerns to school leaders. One of the concerns being Ferris's announcement that it would be discontinuing its bus pass program, which allowed Kendall students to buy a wave card for the Rapid bus system for $3 and get unlimited rides. David Murray, Ferris's Vice President of Marketing and Communications, said the change was motivated by a budget overview. However, due to feedback from students at the town hall, the decision was reversed and the bus pass program was reinstated. To read more on this, visit therapidian.org for that reporting. That's it for city updates. You can keep up with more local news all month long at therapidian.org. And when we come back from the break, we'll be joined by Mayor David LaGrand. Welcome back to City Connection. I'm your host, Allison Donahue, joined today by Mayor David LaGrand. Thanks for coming back on to City Connection.
Always a fun hour.
Yeah. How's your month been?
Good. I'm back on my bike, which is great. It was okay to walk in the winter, but it turns out it's a lot faster to use a bike than to walk.
Yeah, and next week, or maybe the week after. No, next week, Bike to Work Week.
Yeah, I already did a video for it.
Great.
Yeah, and so here's my message for the people out in TV land. Think about it this way. Cars cost about $10,000 a year. And so if you can get a car out of your life, let's say you're a 2-car family, and you can figure out a way to be a 1-car family, you save $10,000. Now, imagine if you could save half of a car. Now, that sounds a little odd, but if you put your car away all summer and didn't insure it, didn't drive it, and all that, you could save about $5,000. So if you could figure out how to use a bike in the warm weather, you would save yourself about, $400 a month for rent or mortgage or whatever. So transportation is a big part of affordable housing and the ability to do that. So when people are looking where they live, I always think the real question they should be asking is, how easy is it to walk around? I've seen you walking around. How easy is it to walk, and how easy is it to bike in the place you're choosing to live? So.
Yeah, that was one of, I think that was brought up. The next thing I was going to ask you about was Neighborhood Summit. Saw you recently, a couple weekends ago at Neighborhood Summit.
Yep.
And I think maybe you talked about the 15-minute neighborhoods.
Yep.
Tell people about this.
Sure. So the idea, it's a great vision, it's a great metric. The idea is a healthy neighborhood, the neighborhoods that people tend to want to live in, ideally have about 90% of the things that you need in the course of your week within a 15-minute walk. Now, not every neighborhood passes that as well as others, and no neighborhood's going to have 100% of what you need. So I love swimming in Lake Michigan. I can't do that in a 15-minute walk from my house. But in my neighborhood, for example, my dentist is on Eastern and Fulton, which is about a 10-minute walk from my house. I ate at an Indian restaurant down on Fulton yesterday. It's about a 12-minute walk from my house. St. Cecilia is about a 12-minute walk from my house. Went to a concert there yesterday. So a lot in my church, I walk to church. I walk to church, I walk to cultural things, I walk to the library, I walk to bars and restaurants. So all of those things tick that box, right? Now, I go to the downtown library, but if you live in Ottawa Hills, the library box is ticked because they've got a library. If you live in Alger Heights, they've got the library box is ticked. Now, some neighborhoods don't have a business district that provides basic needs, but I walk to get my hair cut. So my neighborhood really passes that test as far as I can see. But the idea is then to ask ourselves, how can we get every neighborhood in the city? Because they're interesting, they're different. Ottawa Hills is a very different vibe than Alger Heights, very different vibe than Creston, very different vibe than Heritage Hill, and on and on and on. And they're all fun and different, but how can we really help people get most of their needs met in that distance? And so one of the reasons why downtown has got such a huge potential to be a neighborhood is there's lots of jobs downtown. And so if you work downtown and you can rent or buy something downtown, you can really get rid of a lot of non-walking transportation options easily.
Yeah. One of the pieces of that I'm trying to think of neighborhoods that would have this box ticked, but grocery stores, walkable grocery stores. Do you see that as something the city should consider adding more of in neighborhoods?
Well, that's tricky. And so the first question is, do you want to spend your tax dollars underwriting something? Because the reality is that places like Meijer and Kroger and all these places got really good at doing, and D&W got really good at a pretty big box, and they have really low margins. And so they make like a 1% markup on most of the stuff we get. Well, that's a crazy low market for most businesses. So how does anybody else compete with that? If you're in a city that's really dense, like New York City, you get bodegas every block, and that's awesome. So some of this comes naturally with density, but it's frustrating because a lot of times people feel like, oh, I want a grocery store, but they don't have enough density. So, for example, there was a proposal to put a bunch of new housing at the corner of State and Madison a few years ago, which would have made it more viable to have a grocery store there, and that got shut down. So, you know, if you don't have people, you need customers within walking distance of a grocery store, a lot of them. To
Is that
really
the Dollar General?
It's a Dollar General now. It has been a grocery store. And again, it kind of fell prey to that
conversation.
trend of like, it's not big enough to compete with Meijer. So, you know, if you want a grocery store that loses money and we wanted to use our taxpayers' dollars to prop up a grocery store, we could. I tend to think that our money would probably be better spent on things like housing, public safety, you know, doing a lot of the things that we're already doing in the city, rather than underwriting a grocery store. So I tend to think that, you know, as we get more infill in the city, we'll have more opportunities for places to make it that wouldn't have otherwise. Now, I think that one thing people can do, and there's a Grand Rapids Food Co-op, and that's a membership organization, and my family's a member of it, and it's a bunch of people putting their money together for something that may not make any money, but might provide a grocery store in a neighborhood. And so that's sort of an attractive dream. So back a million years ago, I was a member of the Easttown Food Co-op. It was great. I was a member. I got a percentage off on my groceries. I could get bulk stuff, and my family always laughs. What I used to get was 25-pound sacks of whole wheat macaroni, because I love macaroni, and you couldn't get whole wheat macaroni any other way. So I got it at the co-op, and they special order it for me. So co-op, I love the co-op model, because people involved in co-ops aren't just worried about profit; they're worried about what they're going to get out of it, and they're willing to pay a little bit for it. So I think a co-op model might get us some more grocery stores in town, and I think that'd be great. Sort of a modified membership model. But I also am in conversations with some developers saying, hey, can you think about putting a little grocery store in here? So I'm on the development nudge end of the scale. A number of potential developments in town, I've brought that up as part of the conversation to try to sort of make them think about it. And I've actually brought up the co-op idea, like, hey, maybe you can't get a grocery store in here unless you have something that's got an enthusiastic group of people who are members in it. That might be the thing that bridges your gap between, I've got 10,000 square feet, and no one can make money selling, you know, in a 10,000 square foot. Now, on the west side, we've still got some smaller, viable grocery stores.
Right.
But I think that, you know, it's tough to fight City Hall. It's tough to fight a big box grocery store. So you got to have really, really loyal customers who are willing to pay a little bit more. The other problem with groceries is, at least for me, they're really heavy.
Yeah.
They're one of the heavier things that I deal with in my life. And so, like, we have our dog food dropped off at our front door. It's still hard for me to get the dog food into the house because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
So I don't want to walk home from a store with a 50-pound bag of dog food. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to put a 50-pound bag of dog food on my bike. So if there's the occasional thing you need a car for, you know, a grocery store is not a bad occasional thing to use a car for. And, you know, we've got Uber and Lyft and
The DART
Yep,
car as
yep.
well.
And so, you know, cars cost $30 a day. Should you have a car just for the once every 3 weeks you go to the grocery store? That's probably not a great investment. On the other hand, if you have one car and you are going to use it for one thing, for me, it's visiting people out of town and going to the grocery store. Those are the big things that I got to have a car for that. So if I'm going to go to Lansing and work on a legislative project, I'm not hitchhiking. I'm driving. But if I'm going downtown to work, I can walk. But I'm not going to walk with any dog food.
Fair. Yeah, the 15-minute city neighborhood was an interesting part of the neighborhood summit. What do you personally get out of those events each year?
Well, what I get is I mean, it's so much fun for me. It's a party. I mean, I get to see so many of my favorite people in the city who are doing awesome stuff, who are enthusiastic, who are jugging in their neighborhood. And what I said to them when I you know, kicked off the event was, hey, there are best ideas here, and there are best practices that some neighborhoods are doing great and other neighborhoods could learn from. And so having all those people in one space, I'm sorry to be so geeky about this, but there's really fascinating data that shows that basically people are smarter together. And if you hang around with a smart person, you get measurably smarter. And by smarter, I mean more creative. So, like, which is why Silicon Valley works. And it's why those people stay together, because they kind of spark off each other. And so a week doesn't go by that I don't have a really cool idea that doesn't come out of a conversation. You don't tend to have those ideas in isolation. And so neighborhood summits are a great, I mean, they're that kind of creative space for new possibilities. It's also great because, you know, it's great to see that other people who have the same care for their neighborhood that we all do. So.
Yeah, and you get to see the people behind a lot of the projects. I sat in one about the river and the changes coming to the river, and it was just a good opportunity to get to ask those folks the questions about their plans. So.
Demystifies some of the stuff we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And just, getting to just meet other people that care about this kind of stuff you don't always get to do. So.
Exactly.
Another big thing, and we talked about at the top of the show, is the budget. Before the show started, we were talking about the excitement of new money coming into the budget. It's not always exciting how we move around the same dollars each year, but you said that there was some new money coming in that would be funding. Yeah,
I mean, new money is always exciting because, I mean, imagine your monthly budget's $2,000, right? Well, your rent's not going to change. At least I hope it doesn't. So, you know, 50% of your money's going to rent, and then you got the next $1,000 to spend, and you're like, okay, I can go out to eat every other week because I've got an extra $50. Well, if you got $2,100, you could make your going out to eat budget quadruple, right? So a little extra money might make a big lifestyle choice for difference for you in that one area. And when you've got money allocated, like we have to plow the streets, we have to provide public safety, we have to do all these things that we're sort of long-term committed to, right? We're not going to stop picking up garbage next year. So most of your money is functionally earmarked for the things you're already doing. And let's say you decided, oh, I want to spend a lot more money on garbage trucks, and you didn't have any new money. Then you'd have to figure out where to take the money away from. You're like, you know, and if you wanted to take it away from parks, everyone would freak out and be like, no, I want my parks, keep my parks, right? So if you're playing tug of war over the same old pot of money, you don't tend to get new exciting stuff. But yes, last year in the state allocations to cities, two exciting things happened. One was we got about $1 million in rough numbers for what's called a public safety trust fund. And that was really the money that let us take the leap, the courageous leap into hiring more officers for community policing, and that's like the best, and that's like the happiest part of policing as far as I'm concerned, right? Like, we have to respond to all the traumatic, stressful things we have to respond to. But community police officers are out trying to build trust, build relationships, which you can't ever do too much of. So the money to actually we had community policing back when I was on city commission decades ago. We lost it for a long time. Now we're going to actually have community police officers back, which is exciting. But what's even more exciting is part of that money, about 25%, can be spent on non-policing justice work. And so I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to start a really exciting initiative there that we can talk about after the break. And then the other thing is that we got new money for the road space generally. Now, one of the things that I've been very urgent about is that we really try to make our city a lot friendlier and safer for the most vulnerable travelers who are pedestrians. And everyone's a pedestrian a lot of the time. Even if you drive somewhere and park your car, you're a pedestrian when you get out. So being able to cross the street safely, and also being able to keep kids safe and the elderly safe. There are cities that are so much further down this path than us. And so I think, honestly, if you were to look around the city, it would be surprising if you didn't come up with 1,000 places where we should have instant on flash or crosswalks. We've got a sub 100 now. So we just need hundreds and hundreds more. Mid-block crossings, places where you can just see traffic is going too fast. I parked my car yesterday going somewhere, and I just almost got the door ripped off by a guy who was just going 45 miles an hour. And it was downtown on Fulton. He's going 45 miles an hour at Fulton and Jefferson. And people should not be going that fast there.
I don't even know how you can get speed up between the traffic lights.
It shocked me. I mean, it scared me. But people do it all the time. And so there are engineering ways that we can improve our street design and make things about our streets that make that high speed stuff way less likely to happen. And it can be lethal. If I'd been hit by a car going 45, I wouldn't be here today, and I'd probably be dead. People get hit by cars going more than 35 miles an hour. There's a 90% fatality rate. Below 25 miles an hour, 90% survival rate. So getting cars to go below 25 miles an hour on streets where we might actually have kids, the elderly, and the rest of us is really, really important if we want to keep people alive.
We'll switch gears here in a second, but I will say I was in Milwaukee recently, and they have crossing guards, not just for schools too, just around town they had crossing guards. Thought that was kind of
cool. It's
awesome. Mentioned again at the top of the show is the First Ward Commissioner. There's a vacancy in the First Ward. And recently at a meeting, there was kind of a lock on who commissioners and yourself felt should fill that role before this next election. And there was not a decision made. So what's next?
Yeah, so the simple answer is yes. There was a sort of a 3-3 deadlock, and you need 4 votes to come to a decision. There were 3 finalists. So it was at least pretty clear to me, at least I made the judgment call that I didn't think we were going to get any productive breaking of that deadlock that day. And so, we took a break, and we've been able to continue to think about it, and I think that, so tomorrow we're going to have a budget workshop, but we're also going to include a discussion about whether we can find a path forward to appointing somebody and get a majority opinion for one of the candidates. And it was a 3-3 split, so you couldn't get closer than that. Right. It's not. There are 3 finalists, and it's not as though we were all over the map. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to come to find a candidate that the majority of the commission wants. But we'll continue that conversation tomorrow. Now, if we don't, what happens is there's an opening, and the seat stays vacant. until the voters can fill it. I think a number of my colleagues have said, and I'll be happy to say, I think in a perfect world, we'd be able to call a special election. The charter doesn't let us do that. It used to be that it was all appointments. Now, the charter was amended a few years ago to allow special elections if the appointment's long enough, if the vacancy's long enough. So we got closer to what I think would be ideal, which would be special elections unless it's literally logistically impossible.
Yeah, that was my next question. Do you think the charter should have, because my understanding is that it doesn't right now have a process for appointments in this case.
Oh, yeah, no. We started with a process for appointments. So for years, there was a vacancy, it was filled by appointment. I think it might have been 2019, we took a step towards the special election model, a good step. But and again, I'd have to go back and check the language, but I think it's if the seat's would be vacant for a year or more, or rather before the next election, then you have to call a special election. So that's better. Call me an idealist, but I really like the idea of the voters choosing who their elected officials are and not having a hybrid system where some of them are appointed. So I'm eager to hear ultimately who the first ward elects, but in the meantime, we do have an appointment process, and if we can get consensus or majority on one candidate, then we'll make an appointment.
One last question before we go into break. You mentioned the budget workshop tomorrow. What is the process from this point to get it to the finalized version? So it's the commission talking tomorrow, and will it be like a breakdown line by line, or? Well,
it'll be a breakdown area by area.
Okay.
I mean, you got to remember, I don't know if you've ever seen the budget, but it's like hundreds of pages long. So the assumption is that, or the hope is that we've all done our homework and that we've all got areas, if you want to pull out areas, somebody can say, hey, I would like to talk about this more. So I can think of some things that I know some of your viewers probably have thought about, and that is there's been a conversation about shifting the dash service. That's going to affect some real lives, and it's a real complicated conversation. So that's something that you pull out of the budget. Now, if it's a question of I don't know, how many garbage trucks we're going to have next year. If it's the same number we had last year, and that's what the staff's recommending, and I don't have constituents emailing me that we need more garbage trucks, then I'm probably not going to pull that line out of the budget for discussion. So some of it is driven by community feedback, some of it's what's intuitively obvious to us, and then some of it's, having looked at the way things are now and wondering whether we can do things differently. But as I said, it's like a household budget. Most of the stuff just marches along year to year to year, right?
So the conversations will be happening at tomorrow's workshop and the 12th. And then what kind of vote do you need on the 19th to get it finalized?
Traditionally, that's just a vote of the commission, and usually, not traditionally it's a vote. It is always a vote of the commission, but traditionally by that point, things are, you've pretty much got things ironed out. And I don't know, you can go back, I'm not enough of a historian of the budget votes, but I don't think there have been a lot of close, contentious votes on the budget by the time it gets to that point.
My background is mostly covering the state budget, which is a totally different animal. So,
having done that, but the frustrating thing, having been a state representative, is that stuff happens at the leadership level, which means the rest of us sit around and we're like, they're in the back room making some last-minute drafts on some stuff, and then you never get to see the language in enough time to possibly be able to meaningfully digest it. And you're one of 138 people. So if you say, no, I want an extra $10,000 on this, So it's, unfortunately, that gets delegated. So one of the things that's fun about the city budget is we're a lot closer to it, at least I'm a lot closer to it as mayor, and I think my colleagues, the commissioners, are a lot closer to the budget process than the average state representative is. They can tell you they are, but all they really get is make 3 asks.
Yeah.
And you're like, I would like, $25,000 for a crosswalk on Kalamazoo Street. Maybe that gets in the state budget, but you don't get to decide what the school aid fund's going to look like.
Right.
There are committee chairs. I'm oversimplifying. It's not quite that grim, but it's really rougher than when you're in the minority. Because if you're in the minority, you're just sitting around watching.
Yeah. Yeah, I do appreciate though at the city level, there isn't the back and forth day before the new fiscal year, what's going to happen. So.
One of my sort of grumpy things I used to say about the state legislature was like, I felt like they were pulling all-nighters for roughly the same reason a 20-year-old does on their their final paper. Like, it makes you feel like you're working really hard if you're working in the middle of the night. But like, there are so many times like we could go home, we could sleep, we could come back. There are hours in tomorrow. Like, if you make us work till 4 a.m, we're all just going to go home and sleep tomorrow,
right.
or be hungover. Like,
right.
It seemed a little meaninglessly masochistic. But I don't think I've ever seen people sleeping on the floor of the chambers as they're working on a budget. So
Good.
I'm not looking for that to happen this year.
Good. Well, it's time for us to take a break. When we return, we will be answering questions from viewers like you. If you'd like to take part in the conversation, then send in a question to cityconnection@grcmc.org or submit a question through the Rapidian's Instagram story @the Rapidian. That doesn't stop me. Welcome back to City Connection. It's May 4, 2026, and we're joined here by Mayor David LaGrand. During this part of the show, we'll be taking questions from viewers, starting with a question that came in through Instagram. Why are you so focused on bike paths instead of improving our current public transport system?
Well, I don't know that I'm so focused on bike paths, but in terms of improving our current transportation system, I'm on the board of the Rapid, and that's largely state-funded stuff. So the city doesn't run the Rapid; that's run by an independent entity, and I'm very engaged in that too, and I love public transit. One of the things that interests me about bike lanes most, honestly, is the very poorest members of our community tend to be people who are on bikes, and I'd like to be able to keep them safer. But also, most of the bike infrastructure, what the real add-on you get often is that bike lanes are a great way to generally slow cars down. And mostly I'm concerned about making the city safer for kids and the elderly, because those are the two groups that I really get scared vicariously for. I mean, I can maybe run away from a car, I can maybe dodge a car, but my mom can't, and kids can't, and also people with disabilities. So I tend to think of bikes as supplemental resources to help us make the world better for pedestrians. They're also, like I said, they're a huge anti-poverty tool if people can get themselves away from cars entirely, and they're a tool, right? I mean, the reality is, I travel to cities and I see really great public transit systems, and it's still true that there are many times when walking and biking are just better options. So Amsterdam has an amazing public transportation system. People bike all the time because it's faster. It's not because they are anti-tram and anti-train. You take the tram too. So it's not an either-or question. It's if you're going to build a world where people don't have to turn on a car anytime they want to go anywhere, you want to have options.
I also imagine it's easier since you don't have, like the Rapid isn't just Grand Rapids. So you're dealing with different cities and making decisions too, which can be a challenge.
Yeah.
Mayor LaGrand has expressed support for both flock and safety questions. This is coming from Reddit. Flock and safety cameras and ring cameras. Kent County has a program to connect cameras for real-time monitoring. Does Mr. LaGrand want the community to be covered in surveillance with a centralized database?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that we could have a whole show on this. So I am really concerned. I do not want to live in a surveillance state. And so the questions of, probably whoever asked that question is probably very sophisticated, but like a lot of people saw the Super Bowl ad where they were like, look, ring cameras are great because we can track a stray dog. Well, yeah, you can also track me on the way to work, right? So all the technology, it sounds benign when you're talking about finding a lost dog. But yeah, how much of our privacy do we want to give up? Now, the grim thing that I'm reminded of daily is like, okay, Yeah, maybe a Ring doorbell tracks me, but my phone in my pocket is really tracking me. And so a lot of us have given away a lot of our privacy to big corporations, which does not fill me with joy. And like the fact that Alexa is listening to you all the time, because it has to be listening to you all the time, so that when you say, hey Alexa, it can answer your questions, right? But that means Alexa's listening to you all the time. Well, you know, we all opted into that. And, you know, the balance of like what we're willing to opt into and what the benefits we get from it are versus the harms. Now, someone said I've expressed support for flock cameras. And, you know, they are it's a little bit, I mean, you could say I've expressed, I am supportive of, you know, retailers being able to run my credit card on an internet-based system where I use my credit card to buy coffee at the coffee shop. I'm supportive of that system. Now, it is possible that the credit card company could get hacked and I could get data theft. It's possible that I could get identity theft when I buy a cup of coffee. I'm not in favor of identity theft. I do like the fact that I don't have to carry cash everywhere. The trade-off for that is that, you know, we're all a little more subject to identity theft than I'd like to be. So, you know, the question of flock cameras, if the police are, for example, just so the readers understand, or the viewers, this is a license plate reader. That's all flock cameras do. They don't, you know, check people's hair color or whatever. Now, could they? I suppose they could. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Maybe they could in the same way that, you know, your neighbor's drone maybe could. But, I mean, they are cameras, and presumably the camera has the capacity to look at something other than a license plate. But how they're used is to look at license plates, which is something every cop in the world does every time they are behind a car, right? They run the plate. That's what they do all the time. Police traditionally do this all the time. So that's sort of a surveillance state thing too. I mean, do we want to live in a world where the police are allowed to just run your license plate if they don't have any reason to? We've put up with that for decades. So these are really complicated conversations, and they're really important conversations. Now, I, for full disclosure, have a Ring camera on my house. I have one on my house because our police chief said, hey, you should get a little more security around your house now that you're mayor. So I have a Ring camera, and I could look on my phone right now and see if somebody's trying to break into my house. That's really handy. Does it creep me out that maybe I could get hacked into, maybe without my authorization, and someone could figure out what's going on in my Ring camera? Yeah. On the other hand, I don't have it in my bedroom. I have it on the front of my house. So it would tell the world what's on my porch. Now, could a porch pirate maybe come steal the latest thing that got dropped off of my house? Maybe. You know, and so the question of how much you trust these people to keep your data secure or to put the limits on that you say you want, right? So if I say to my Ring camera, I don't want you sharing that information with anybody, do they obey that rule or don't they obey that rule? And that's a constant concern about people who are in the cybersecurity space. So had somebody come to the last city commission meeting who said, hey, they can say that they're gonna not use your data for X, Y, or Z purposes, but they're a for-profit corporation. So like they're always gonna have an incentive to bend permission and try to talk you into giving permission for things you didn't give permission for. So again, the constant dilemma. Nobody asked me. I have lots of friends who put tape over the camera on their computer because they're not sure if they're going to accidentally click a button that says, hey, you can use my camera whatever you want. None of us do that well, most of us wouldn't do that on purpose, but the world's full of consent things. When was the last time anybody was online and looked at the 15 pages of consent that you had to sign for, you know, so that you could order a pair of hiking boots from some random company on the website, right? Like they can embed something in that consent that says, by the way, we're also giving us consent to spy on you. Like we live in a world where these things are complicated and always happening. So I will say, just to bring it home a minute, GR does not share flock data. That is what the police chief told me. Now, and was public about. Now, maybe he's lying, maybe Flock's lying, but assuming that our chief was not lying and assuming that Flock is obeying the rules, we have a very tight limit on what our Flock cameras can be used for. So we don't even share that with other law enforcement entities. We could, maybe it's a little, we get information from like, you know, law enforcement agencies in Georgia, but we don't give. So we're a little selfish on our flock use, and I think I approve of that. I would be very, very nervous about us starting to share the data wider, and we absolutely do not share it with the federal government, just so we're clear. Now, Ring cameras, that's kind of like your phone in your pocket. Anybody can go buy a Ring camera, anybody can put it on their house, and anybody, I guess, can share it with Mr. Ring, who I guess can help use it to find dogs, but maybe also find it to, like, track people's movements, right? Like, so it's a really complicated and really important topic.
Yeah. One follow-up I do have on it, and it's because I don't fully understand the whole conversation, but like with the drones, we can FOIA for that information, I believe, and find out where all the drones are flying. But, and this is how I understand it, please correct me if I'm wrong, the city had a contract with the company Flock before we decided that we would make that information accessible to the public. So that isn't FOIAble right now, the Flock data. Is that true?
And there, I think my colleagues and I know this, like we basically, Flock got grandfathered before we put on our surveillance policy, which covers drones and technology moving forward. We need to drag the Flock conversation into the security conversation. So yes, that is a pending piece of business that we know we have to get done.
Good deal. Okay, it is time for us now to take another break. Thank you for letting me squeeze that question in. When we return, we'll be taking more questions from the public. Welcome back to City Connection. We're joined here by Mayor David LaGrand, taking questions from the public. This question comes from a documenter regarding the budget. Are the proposed funds for improvements to police facilities included in the $75.4 million allocated to the police department? Do they count toward the department's minimum funding requirement?
Good question, and I'm not sure. That's what I'm going to have to get back to you question. I did just look at that in the proposed allocation for police funding in the draft we have now is about 37%, and it was that last year too. So it's well above the 32% floor. So it may not matter a great deal if someone's worried about like what police spending is. I'm pretty sure that that's going to be included, but I'm not 100% sure. And I always got to be a little cautious when I'm taking questions on the fly about things that,
That's fair. And in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure that will be answered. Mayor LaGrand, you have received benefits from the city to better your personal property. Why are you so against the city providing services like plowing? You encourage citizens to dig themselves out. Why are the rest of us not entitled to the same services you benefit from?
Okay, so benefits from my property. I did get a historic tax credit once for a house that my kids owned. I mean, we could go through this. Like, I've applied for programs that have tax credits.
I think I know the context because I read this Reddit. It was about you had your lead line replaced.
Oh, like everyone else in the city? Okay, I don't even know when that happened. But I mean, I believe it. I'm glad. But as for the plowing thing, it's unfortunate. So here's I would love it if we had city-wide sidewalk plowing. Okay, I love the idea. I think that we could. Can I take a geeky moment on this?
Sure.
Okay. Right now, I think what we do in cities for sidewalk snow removal is basically a bad model. What you do is you get some individual, person who mows lawns, has lawn care service in the summer, and who does sidewalk snow plowing in the winter, and you can hire them for hundreds of dollars to drive from wherever they are, come to your house, do your place, and then leave. Maybe you're lucky and you get a smart operator who's like, hey, I'll give you a discount if you include your neighbors, but basically he's coming with a bunch of equipment to your place, doing your property. Or you do what I do and you shovel. But if you could start at one end of the block and just do the whole block, it's exponentially more efficient. So it's a great thing to have the government do. Also, the fact that we plow, that everyone acts like it's absolutely necessary that we plow for cars, which it is, but that sidewalks are somehow optional, I don't get that. Like, the fact that you don't have a car doesn't make you not a resident. Like, you have just as much right to get around on foot as anybody does to get around in a car, as far as I'm concerned. So I would love to change that. Now, the happy thing to know is we are starting to do sidewalk plowing, and we're actually going to increase it next year substantially in the budget. So that is an exciting thing. I would love to have it simply be universal. What I did once was I said, hey, in a world where things aren't perfect, we can volunteer to help our neighbors. And so if everybody knows at street intersections, plows come and they like clog up the end of the sidewalk. Well, the person at the end of the sidewalk doesn't feel like it's their personal job to go out and spend an hour unclogging that mound that really sucks for the rest of us, right? So I was like, I'm just gonna do the one on the end of my street. And if everyone had somebody on their block who was willing to spend the time to do it on behalf of the universe, like, it would be great for people with disabilities. It'd be great for my mom. It'd be great for my daughter who's blind and can't get over those snow humps worth a darn. So in a world where we could pay the city to have workers to come out and spend hours with shovels on every intersection, that'd be great. That'd be real money. And until we get the money to do that, until, the process gets us a whole lot more resources for getting rid of those end-of-block humps that the plow makes, we could individually take care of them ourselves. And I get a lot of like, oh, the government should do that. Well, okay, you can say that, but then, the money's got to come from somewhere. And, I was actually inspired by Easttown has this Snow Angels program, which is awesome. They're like, hey, some people are old, it sucks for them to have to shovel. So maybe you could adopt somebody who has a hard time shoveling. It was a great idea. It was all volunteer-based. So I was like, hey, maybe we could volunteer to help our block. Because we know that there's that hump at the end of the block at virtually every block in the middle of the winter. So lots of people some people thought it was a good idea, but then some people got grumpy about it. I don't know why, so.
Yeah, I don't know. In New York, they're paying people to shovel now.
Which, which would be fine if that's how we want to model it out. It is not in this year's budget to have
That's fair.
thousands of hours of guys with shovels at the end of blocks.
fair.
We don't have the resources for it in the current model. We could do it, but we'd have to, get more tax revenue.
Another question from a documenter, I believe still about the budget. Is it possible for there to be a small portion of the budget set aside for making the community resources known to the public? For example, with immigration, a lot of the Latino community isn't aware of everything available because of the language barrier.
That is a great idea. So yes, good idea. Now, I will say, as with everything in government, like, you want to do everything better tomorrow than you did it yesterday. And so before I just say that was a great idea, which it is, I will also say our communications has gotten so much better at the city. And we have great people working in our comms department, and we're constantly trying to make our website more clear and more available. And so even on immigration things, the city has a very clear, very detailed, very well worked out non-cooperation with ICE policy for our police department. We explicitly say that, so there were some demands on this, we are explicitly doing the things that are in the demand. We also couldn't possibly do, I would never morally want to, but the city is prohibited from entering into what's called 287G agreements. Our city attorneys said that very clearly. Well, I want that up on the website so that if someone's like, hey, I'm worried about the city entering into 287G agreements, they can go to the website and be like, oh, can't. The city attorney says they can't, because that's where that is. So yeah, communication's always great.
And I did notice there's recently been added a CERT training in Spanish and Know Your Right workshops have also been offered in Spanish. That
being said, our website transitioned right now, and like many transitions, it's a little glitchy right now. So a lot of the links are dead, and we're working on it.
That's right. Last question coming from a documenter. How does the city determine not the last question. How does the city determine the order of its park improvements enhancement projects?
That's a great question. As with everything else, we try to make sure that we're sort of spreading the love equally around as much as we can. But then there are some things that are immediate needs. And then there are some places where you have friction, for lack of a better way to put it. So I'll give you an example. Down at Veterans Park, which is a very well-used park, it's very well used, and so A lot of the concrete just kind of looks gunky right now, but we did a citywide cleanup. So I spent a lot of the weekend walking around thanking people for picking up trash. My mom went out and picked up trash. So we did a city pickup on Friday and then a neighborhood pickup on Saturday. But when you're out there and you notice, one of the things I noticed was, like, there's some power washing that has to happen there. Now, in a less used park, you wouldn't have to worry about that so much. So some of it's a byproduct of use. Some of it's making sure that if you can do better fits with people's needs. So the people, and some of it's advocacy. So there was a group in Creston that did a great job advocating, got themselves some pickleball courts because they wanted some pickleball courts. Now, probably everybody wants pickleball courts, but they advocated.
I think we can squeeze in one more question, if you're quick. I've seen bikes on the front of buses as I've walked around downtown the other day. Do all buses have bike racks? I don't live near a bus stop, but could bike to one pretty fast if that was an option.
I think they do, but boy, I'd have to ask Deb from the Rapid. I mean, that's, have Deb on and ask her. I see them on front of buses too, which is great, because the ability to do a hybrid trip, right? Bike to a bus stop, take the bus, would be awesome. Is awesome.
That are all the questions that we had from folks writing in. I did have one question about the minor ordinance for, they have a curfew in the summertime. Do you know if folks, if minors have ever been given the fine for staying out past midnight?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it is a real, that is not one of my favorite ordinances. That's a very politic way to say it. But I think we have to have a community conversation about, like, why are you making staying up late at night a criminal offense?
$500 is a big, and 90 days in juvenile detention.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, it's actually, I mean, I'd have to go back and check, but last time I looked, it was actually a misdemeanor. So, like, why do you want to give somebody a criminal record for being out at night? Because you've always got to struggle with, like, the risks of disproportionate enforcement, but whether you're going to neighborhoods that with different demographics and enforcing more heavily in one than the other. And that's one that's has frustrated me for years, and it is absolutely on my list of things to address.
Great. I'm glad that we squeezed that one in before the end of the show then. That's all the time we have for today, so thank you to our guest, Mayor LaGrand, for coming in and sharing your insight, and thank you to all of you at home for tuning in and sending in your questions. Don't forget, you can always watch rebroadcasts throughout May on cable GRTV's Channel 25 or the GRTV YouTube page. See you next month, Grand Rapids.